All right, welcome back. This is the time we get to dive into the tropics and really let you know what's going on. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson, and things are still, I would say, on the quiet side in the fact that there's nothing named out in the Eastern Pacific or the Atlantic, but things are trying to brew a little bit, sort of trying to get a little bit more active. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit. It's all sort of focused around Central America as we've got this Eastern Pacific with lots of stormy weather happening and definitely looking like this is going to want to form into some sort of tropical system, probably even be able to get it organized enough to become a hurricane. But over across the Yucatan Peninsula, you'll notice there's some showers and some storms that are kind of moving across the Yucatan and getting into the Bay of Campeche and just the southern Gulf region. That might also want to try to develop into something that would be short-lived, and it's a lot less likely overall of what we're looking for as far as that goes. We're going to call this a tropical wave, even though it's kind of moving over land at the moment. I think that's still a pretty good look at it. So here's officially what the National Hurricane Center is identifying as far as the possibilities of its development. We'll put a 90% chance over into the Eastern Pacific, 20% chance as this crosses over that we could see that developing into a system. So keeping an eye on it, and when we look at our computer models, we're going to kind of watch this mess, and you'll notice here as we get to the through the weekend, by the time we get to the end of the day on Sunday, this has pretty much had all the chance that it's got. So it really needs to work hard in the next couple of days if it wants to become a tropical system. But a little bit of spin just trying to take place right as it then moves over Mexico. And at that point, we're going to, once it gets over land, we're not as concerned that it's going to be a tropical system. And you can see that this mess that's over in the Eastern Pacific getting a little bit more organized as we get into next week. So continuing to watch those areas closely. Maybe you've got a vacation, maybe you're about to head out on a cruise, just sort of wanted to touch on that a little bit. We do have some calm wave heights across the Gulf right now, but that's going to modify a little bit as we move it to the weekend, somewhat associated with the activity that's happening down in the Bay of Campeche, or the possibility of something forming that is going to kick off a little bit of extra wind, kick off a little bit of extra wave heights, and so that's sort of going to spin out into the Gulf. I don't think it's really going to have enough of an impact to get all the way up into the much into Texas or the other states along the Gulf, but you can certainly see that we do expect these wave heights to increase. All, and again, sort of associated with what's trying to develop over the next couple days through the weekend. And then down into the Caribbean, we also are going to be looking for some higher wave heights. So if you've got any sort of plans into the beginning of next week in the Caribbean, that is something that's going to be something worth watching overall. Just sort of a reminder as we're beginning to wrap up June and where we've been focused on formations happening historically, just strictly looking at the history books, and then as we get into July, where we'll be focusing. So in most of June, we're really focused on the Gulf, a little bit of the Caribbean, and then along the southeastern side of the U.S. into the Atlantic. Again, just a reminder, this is where formations would happen, where something is developed. It's not an impact zone. It's not where we have strikes from a hurricane. It's where that development would really start at, and then it would track off perhaps somewhere else. So same concept here. These are the areas where we're watching for development to something to actually form, a tropical storm, and then it would track off and go different directions depending on the different steering currents that are out there. But we keep the Gulf, we keep the southeastern portions of the U.S., but we expand out into the Atlantic a little bit. We even increase that likeliness. This is, again, a little bit more, even higher possibilities off of the east coast of the U.S. And then we get down into the Caribbean. We kind of open that up a little bit as possibilities, watching things begin to form a little bit. Those tropical waves are trying to start getting organized coming off of the African coast. They get a lot better organized once we get a little further into the season. But for now, that's a zone, and that's kind of why we sort of add that. We increase that as a possibility. So when we look at the record books again, this goes all the way back to 1851. Obviously, we didn't have the satellites to give us a clear picture, but we've got a pretty good rhythm here of what we are expecting when we look at a year. And we can see that June and July are relatively quiet. we get into August and we start getting active. So pretty much on track what we were expecting. It's just for the last 10 years, we've been used to seeing more action earlier in the year, but that's not really the common sort of thread of things when we look at the bigger picture as far as what we would normally see. So Andrea did form out in the Atlantic. If you remember, that was like a 12-hour storm. Not much to report there except that it met those tropical characteristics and able to kind of check a name off of the list. That's certainly one of those that we wouldn't have known about before satellites. So that's going to add to the numbers a little bit. Barry is going to be that next name that we'll be listening for. So remember, the Atlantic and the Pacific have different lists of names. And so the Pacific has been much busier, the Eastern Pacific, and they have already had several named storms, and they've got a different set of lists. So Barry is the one you're looking at if you're focused on the Atlantic. Just a quick reminder that a great way to prepare, and again, this is the time to prepare. When things are quiet, that's when you want to check all your resources. You head to the store, there's not going to be lines for gas and for cash and for batteries and things that you can kind of get organized and plan for now. But if you're on YouTube already, or if you're not, head over there to YouTube, search for Meteorologist John Dawson. You're going to find my channel, and there's a playlist there. Plus, you can just see all the videos popping up about my hurricane gear test, where I present ideas for you to consider. Not that I really am trying to get you to buy or not buy a specific product, but I show you a product, I give a review on it, give you my opinion, and I'd say how it could apply for hurricane preparedness and really just emergency preparedness in general. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of get your mind going a little bit and think about some things that are impacting your life, because all of us might have some general things that are in common, but your plan has to be very specific to what your needs are. So that's going to do it for our tropical update today. Remember, we do this every day of hurricane season, not just the weekdays. So join me again tomorrow, and I'll tell you what's happening in the tropics.